Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Florida Hockey Now Panthers playoff preview. The Florida Panthers are going to play the Tampa Bay Lightning, I believe, right?
I think so.
Sunday, 12:30, Amerant Bank Arena in Sunrise. I'm George Richards of Florida Hockey Now. This is Colby D. Guy, Jessica from Florida. What is it?
Bally Sports Florida.
Bally Sports Florida will join us as soon as she gets here.
Is this my cue to
come on in? Come on in. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about the Panthers. Jessica, Colby, I don't know where we're at here. Panthers playing Tampa Bay. This is the third time in 4 postseasons that Florida's taken on the Lightning. It never happened before 2021, and now it's 3 and 4 years. What are you expecting from the Panthers in this series?
Well, I think I'm expecting something completely different than what we've seen in the playoffs before between these two teams, because the truth of the matter is the Florida Panthers are a completely different team now than they were a couple seasons ago playing the Tampa Bay Lightning, and not just from a roster perspective.
Right.
Stylistically, structure-wise, so much more defensive-minded. And so I'm expecting this to be, in the words of Paul Maurice, a hell of a matchup. Because it is going to be a Florida Panthers team that has prided themselves all season long in being one of the best defensive teams in the National Hockey League. And then you have a Tampa Bay Lightning team who maybe after a little bit of a slow start and not having Andrei Vasilevskiy has really hit its stride in the second half of the season, and they're coming into the playoffs hot. Obviously with guys like Stamkos and Kucherov and what they've done this season from a goals and an assist perspective, points perspective, and then knowing how important special teams can factor into it as well, with Tampa having one of the best power plays and the Panthers having such a great penalty kill. I mean, there's so many different intriguing storylines. I just expect it, like Paul Maurice said, to be a hell of a series between these two teams.
And a lot of changes around the Panthers since 2022. Paul Maurice comes in. You get Matthew Tkachuk brought in instead for Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar. Does that affect this? I think it does. I mean, but you've still got John Cooper coaching the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Right.
He knows all about these Panthers.
Well, I think, of course, it changes it completely, right? Because I think the one thing that you love about Matthew Tkachuk is just the way he drags everybody into the fight, and the fact that Matthew Tkachuk is the type of player that is so specifically, perfectly created for playoff hockey. So I think, just having Matthew Tkachuk, and I go back to the quote from the day that he was acquired, and we met with him, and he said, I hate Edmonton, but I hate Tampa even more now. I mean, brought that in before playing a single game as a Florida Panther against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So just that whole mentality, and even more so just the way that mentality has spread throughout this team, right? And so it's not just Matthew Tkachuk. It is Sam Bennett, and it is Sam Reinhart, and it is Brandon Montour, Aaron Ekblad, and Barkov. And you just go down the list, and every single player has that mentality. And I've always said one of my favorite things about the Florida Panthers this year is that despite being in a completely different position this season than they were last season, clawing and scratching, pun intended, to get into the playoffs, I feel like this team, despite securely being in a playoff position all season long, still played with the same desperation and intensity as that team last year, who needed every single point possible. And that's what I love, is that there hasn't been any, just like Coach always says, there's no nights off. This team never takes nights off, and they don't cheat the game in any way, shape, or form. And so I think you have a team that last year going into the playoffs was hot because they had to fight for their lives the entire second half of the season. I think you have a team this year that is going into the playoffs in a completely different set of circumstances, a completely different set of expectations, but there is such a confidence there because they never lost the way that they played last year. They carried it over into this season.
What I've been impressed with is usually you have a Stanley Cup hangover that affects the losing team, not necessarily the winner.
Right.
Not that anybody ever repeats, but the losing team usually falls off. Right. The losing team usually falls off a little bit of a cliff here in Florida. Really picked right up. I mean, they lost the first 2 games of the season, but they were, you know, in a playoff spot by Thanksgiving and never gave it up.
And what was so much more impressive, the fact that there was not only no hangover, but they were playing without Bennett, Montour, and Ekblad to start the season, which were huge losses from a roster
lot of people thought
perspective.
Florida wasn't even going to make the playoffs.
Without a doubt.
With those guys.
So it makes it even more impressive that every single player stepped up. Every single player did their part. Sergei Bobrovsky, we know what he did in the playoffs last year. He was unbelievable. He carried it over into this season, and he has been so consistent and so solid in net night in and night out. And so is Anthony Stolarz backing up Bobrovsky. I mean, everybody has done their job and done their job well. So I think you should have this ultimate supreme confidence in the Panthers and what they can do going into the playoffs this year, because I honestly think at the end of the day, they're a better overall team this season than they even were last season when they made it to the Stanley Cup final. So it's really exciting to think about.
Bill Zito deserves a lot of credit too for kind of addressing what went wrong during that Stanley Cup final and during the run through the playoffs last year to kind of make this team a better team too, because one of the biggest Achilles heels during that Stanley Cup finals was the penalty kill. As soon as they got to the Stanley Cup final, they took some penalties. Vegas was all over them on the power play. And you bring in a guy like Kevin Stenlund, you bring in a guy like Dmitry Kulikov, which has really done a good job of stabilizing that penalty kill. The defense has a lot more depth. The forward group has a lot more depth. So you're looking at a team that not only has the same flavor as last year's team as far as being a good playoff team, but it's also better, has more depth, and they did a really good job of identifying that number one weakness they had, which a lot of times these Stanley Cup final teams that get on the hangover the following year, they don't really address that, and they kind of rest on their laurels of what they did well. But this time they kind of went and saw what they did well, saw what they didn't do well, tweaked that, and all of a sudden they're even better than what they were during last year's run. But then again, NHL playoffs can be crazy and anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Yeah.
But I'll just tell you, being at the draft in Nashville a couple weeks after the finals had ended, talking with Bill Zito, and it was like, okay, well, let's look at, we're going to upgrade. We're going to upgrade here. We're going to upgrade there. And they absolutely did. They upgraded the backup goalie position. Everybody loved Alex Lyon for good reason. We all love Alex Lyon. They got a better goalie in Anthony Stolarz. Stahl, everybody loved him. But they got better. They got a fourth line. They've got a fifth line now. They are so deep at the forward line. If they have injuries in these playoffs, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, and it again speaks to just bigger picture what we've seen really since Bill Zito has taken over, how he has found these guys who have either come here and revitalized their careers or just completely fit into the dressing room, completely fit into the style of hockey that the Panthers want to play. I mean, you mentioned it, Dmitry Kulikov coming back, Kevin Stenlund.
These one-year deals have been great. Right.
Oliver Ekman-Larsson, is another great example. So Stephen Lawrence.
Call him Olio.
There's just so many examples that you can look at and say, wow, not only was this a great pickup or a great trade or a great waiver wire acquisition.
They've done a lot. They've done a lot of great jobs.
And it's just all really fit beautifully together. And then credit to Paul Maurice as well, because it was not easy last season to completely change the entire structure of how a team plays. And now we have seen this complete shift in philosophy and a team that has embraced actually exactly the way Paul Maurice wants them to play.
This series very easily could have been the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Boston Bruins ran away from Tampa Bay. Florida ran right into their arms. Do you have a problem with that? Or you're like, hey, it seemed like the Panthers are like, whatever it is, it is.
I will say I do feel like the Leafs would have been a better matchup. But at the end of the day, if you think that you are a Stanley Cup contender, it should not matter who you play in the first round. Plain and simple. It should not matter who you play in the first round.
I think the thing that mattered more to them was the fact that they could get home ice against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the second round. I think that, or against the Boston Bruins in the second round. I think that was the more important thing. And whoever you play in the first round, you go ahead and deal with. You're going to treat them with the same respect, whether it's Toronto, whether it's Tampa. But this is a matchup they also probably want because they want to get over the demons they had.
It's time to exercise the playoff demons that are the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Was it slay a dragon? Was that, I think, the term I used today?
Yes, you did.
Slay a dragon.
Yes, you did.
Jessica Blaylock from Bally Sports Florida. Where can people see? What is Bally Sports Florida? I've never heard of it. What is it? Is it something new?
It's this newfangled thing where we're going to start broadcasting Panther playoff games. I know. It's going to be a lot of fun.
On television.
But yes, we will have you on Bally Sports Florida covered for the first round of the playoffs. All hands on deck. I'll be hosting the pregame show. Jovo and Chick will once again be pregame analysts. You'll have Goldie and Randy on the game call. Katie Engelson will be covering the sidelines. I know.
Tweets.
So the people who have been covering the team, you know, day in, day out, all year long, we will have you covered for the first round of the playoffs as well.
And Florida Hockey Now has been covering the team all year.
Exactly.
We will be there as well. Jessica
Go
Blaylock.
to the local sources.
Local. That's what that means,
Well,
right? The L is
yeah,
for local.
Local.
The L is for local here in Florida Hockey Now. Colby D guy, where can people? Where else can people see you? You're on the Twitters, aren't you?
I am on the Twitters.
Instagrams?
I'm on the interweb, all over the
all over.
Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at Jess Blaylock. Instagram at Jess L Blaylock. But I do have to give you a heads up. It's a lot of pictures of my dogs. So if you're interested in Lemon and Mario content, find me on Instagram. If you're actually interested in Florida Panthers content, find me on Twitter.
Colby, what about you?
You can find my work at floridahockeynow.com and the Associated Press, and also the Palm Beach Post sometimes. And you can find me on Twitter at Colby D Guy, where I tweet Florida Panthers news and occasional bad jokes.
Occasional? Have you seen some of this guy's tweets?
I have.
Anywho, I'm George Richards. You can catch me on Twitter at George Richards. Don't forget to subscribe here on the YouTube channel. We're going to have a lot of good stuff throughout the postseason, post game practice videos. We just got, what, Paul Maurice,
Sam Reinhart,
Sam Reinhart, and Alexander Sasha Barkov. So check that out. Subscribe. That way you get told about it. We're here from the Iceplex, the what do you call it? The gift shop, the Disney-esque gift shop.
Can I have my Florida Panthers bike now?
Let's go. We'll go get her the bike. You're going to ride it home, though, right?
Yeah, I'll pull my car behind me on the bike.
Okay, good. All right. So for Jessica Blaylock, Colby D Guy, I'm Jorge Richard. Thank you for watching. We'll see you Saturday? Down the road.